This is Football Night in America, served by Applebee's.
FNIA podcast served by Applebee's. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Unfortunately, our quarterback, Jack Collinsworth, is not with us, so it'll be just Rodney Harrison and I today. And before we get started on the current news, I got some good news. Rodney Harrison is, for another year, the top 25 Hall of Fame semifinalist, and congratulations, Rod. That is unbelievable news.
Absolutely, Coach. And this is something that I don't really pay close attention to. I had someone kind of text me late last night, and mention it, and I didn't even really pay attention to it. You told me again this morning, so I'm kind of pumped up about it.
Yeah, you should be, and it's an awesome, awesome honor. Semifinalists. The voting will go down to the final 5 somewhere during the playoffs, but well-deserved, and it's going to happen one of these days, hopefully this year, but Rodney Harrison in the final 25 once again, so that's great news.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, didn't you have a couple guys on your own team that became semifinalists too?
Yes, first time, Adam Vinatieri just is out 5 years now, and he is well-deserved in that group too. And then 2 of my former players, Reggie Wayne and Robert Mathis. So I'm excited. That's 4 votes for me, I guess, right there, for sure. But 4 guys were really, really well-deserving. Yes. Yeah. Well, let's talk about some current NFL news. And just breaking, the New York Jets have fired their general manager, Joe Douglas. Rodney, what is going on with the Jets, and what do you make of this news?
Well, I don't like it right now, but I understand it. Joe Douglas was given 5 years, and you start thinking about some of his draft choices. You think about Mekhi Becton. He was a guy that was chosen and really didn't work out, and he was actually chosen before Tristan Wirfs, an all-pro for Tampa. But you also look at Zach Wilson. He's the number 2 overall pick. He whiffed on that one. You talked about messing up a situation with Hassan Reddick. You trade for the guy, and you don't have a contract in place, and he doesn't understand the fact. The simple principle is these guys, if they get traded to a team, they want their families to have security. How do you not have a contract worked out for a guy that you're going to trade for? So I think it was time for them to move on general manager-wise, but the timing is just a little weird, Coach.
Yeah. And you see on the graphic, some of the hits and misses. Sauce Gardner was a good pick. Breece Hall, very good pick. So it was up and down. The thing that probably has people really consternated is the fact that, hey, you went out, you got this high-priced quarterback, and it's not paying off. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I look at the Jets, you start thinking about the Jets and what they need moving forward. I say the Jets need an offensive-minded coach, a guy like a Ben Johnson that can come in. And I'm going to tell you what else I would do, Coach. I would go out and I would trade for a particular guy next year. And his name is Hendon Hooker. He's the backup quarterback for the Detroit Lions. He's 25 years old. He played a lot in college. He was a Heisman hopeful before he got hurt, and we saw him in Detroit, Coach. We saw him throwing that football, and he throws the football with velocity. He's strong, he's smart, he's athletic, and he's a guy that can come in and make a difference right away. So if I'm the Jets, instead of drafting one of these young guys, I might offer a first-round pick to the Detroit Lions for their backup quarterback.
It's funny you mentioned that. I remember back in the day, I was a young defensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Green Bay Packers made that kind of move. They traded for a young kid who hadn't played much at Atlanta named Brett Favre, and it worked out pretty well for them.
Are you serious? I'm
Yes.
telling you, man, this is a kid. I'm telling you, this is a kid who can do it all. And you know who who reminds me of? He reminds me of a bigger version, a little older version of Jayden Daniels. I'm telling you, when you see this kid play, he can throw the ball deep, accurately down the field. He can throw out cuts, 7 routes, corner routes, digs. He can do it all. And when the pocket breaks down, he can scramble, he can move. He's really fast. And he's a guy that's a tremendous leader. I'm telling you, I know it sounds weird, but it's truly not, Coach. This kid can come in day one, and I'll take him before I take a guy like Williams out in Chicago, Drake May, Michael Penix. He's better than all those guys.
Well, that's a good tip for whoever's going to be the next general manager of the Jets. And I'm just a little curious about the timing of the move. I don't like it. I don't think it's going to help you win any more games now. But what it might do, if you're the owner, Woody Johnson, and you've decided to clean house, this gives you a jump start on getting that next regime in place. You can go out now and start interviewing GMs. You can put your list together for head coaches. Gives you an opportunity to get started without having to go behind your general manager's back.
And if the Jets are smart, you go to two places to grab a general manager. You're going to go to Baltimore, or you go to a place like Kansas City and get someone within their organization that knows the ups and downs and all the drafts and all those different things. So for me, I'm getting one of those guys, like the Chargers went out and got their guy from Baltimore. That's what they need to do. Find a winning organization.
Well, the Jets are a team that's struggling, looking for new leadership. Let's go to another team that's struggling, the Dallas Cowboys. Do you think they need new leadership in the head coach position?
They need a lot, Coach, and it's unfortunate because I think Mike McCarthy has done a solid job down there. What I was thinking is this is an opportunity now for them to see who they have. And a kid that we saw throwing the football was Trey Lance. I think give him an opportunity. We already know what Cooper Rush can do. He's going to be a career backup. You need to figure out what you have in Trey Lance. We saw him throwing the football. He's a big kid. He's a very impressive looking kid, but he's not very accurate. And the ball placement was here. It was here. It was all over the place. But I still would give him an opportunity to play. I mean, he was what, the number 2 or 3 pick overall?
Yeah. No, I'm like you. And the Dallas Cowboys, I like Mike McCarthy. He's done a good job. He's been to Super Bowls. But when you didn't sign him to a long-term deal, you basically said, I'm going to see what happens this year. And now that they're not in the playoff hunt, they're struggling, they're losing home games. I don't know if you're Jerry Jones. I don't think you could re-sign Mike McCarthy next year at this point because you backed yourself into a corner.
Yeah, and if I was Mike McCarthy, I wouldn't want to come back anyway. I just think the owner is too involved, and it's almost like the players are more concerned about impressing the owner as opposed to impressing the coach. And it should never be that way. The owner should always make sure that the coach has the necessary power that he needs to coach these guys and demand that respect. And I just don't think it. Another move I would make, and now people are starting to talk about it, and I've been saying this for the last couple of months, I would trade Micah Parsons. There's no way I would resign Micah Parsons. I'll send a message to my locker room and say, hey, we're changing the culture. This is no longer the culture. I would make a standard a rule, no podcast during the season. If you want to do a podcast, do it after the season. But we need all your attention. And if you can focus in on that, you want to be part of that, the new thing that we're building, you can be part of this team. But I'm sending a message to my entire team and to my entire organization that this is a new culture, and I'm moving on from Micah Parsons.
Well, let's say, I guess we're in agreement, Dallas needs a new coach. We know that the Jets need a new GM. What's the better job, or what's the worst job in your opinion? Would you want to be the Dallas Cowboys head coach or the Jets general manager?
I would rather be the Jets general manager, because if I'm a Jets general manager, I'm not locked, after this year, I'm not going to be locked into a $50 million quarterback. So I have the option to go out and make a trade for a Hendon Hooker or another quarterback and slowly but surely rebuild. They have to build up front, Coach. We talk about all the weapons, the running back, the wide receiver, but it's the line of scrimmage that really sets the foundation for your team. And you think about it, Malik Neighbors. Go ahead. I'm done.
Well, I think those jobs depend on how much freedom you're going to have. Is the owner going to stay out of your way as the Jets general manager? Is the owner going to stay out of your way as the Dallas head coach? The one thing about Dallas, you have had some success in the past. Mike McCarthy's been to some playoffs. You've got a roster there that is talented. The Jets, there hadn't been a lot of success there in a long time. That's what I'd be worried about. And plus all the media. Now, media is going to be on you in Dallas or New York. Doesn't matter. So I'm going to say I'd probably rather be the Dallas Cowboys head coach.
Wow. Yeah. And I get it too, coach, because you can come in, you already have a franchise quarterback. You already got an outstanding one of the top 5 receivers in all of football. So you have talent at different positions. I'm still concerned about that offensive line, lack of run game. You're still going to be a one-dimensional team if you can't fix that offensive line. And then on the defensive line, you can't stop anybody. You have nothing but pass rushers. These guys, they're not built to stop the run. These guys want to get after the quarterback. So, of course, trading for some defensive tackle help.
Well, 2 tough situations, Dallas and New York. Speaking of New York, let's go to another New York team, the Giants. What do you make of them benching Daniel Jones after they just gave him such a big contract 2 years ago?
Well, it seems like a lot of people in that organization need to probably be fired too, Coach, because I mean, who in their right mind would have given Daniel Jones $40 million a year? If you're a coach anywhere, let alone the Giants, you're not giving Daniel Jones $40 million. He's lucky if he gets $20 million a year. And so they really set the tone for their team at the beginning, not signing Saquon Barkley and choosing this guy over Saquon Barkley. And it's just been a mess. And players understand that. Players look at this situation and say, well, you just choose him because of X, Y, Z. And now, you know, you have that dissension in the locker room. But I do believe the Giants, they've improved their offensive line. They got some studs on the defensive line. They have some potential. This is not a terrible job. You know, you need consistent quarterback play, but they got some lot of pieces, coaches. They can add another wide receiver to help Malik Neighbors and maybe a more athletic tight end, but this is not a terrible job.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the one thing, though, bad decisions in certain situations can just set you back for years. So you had a chance to give the big money to Daniel Jones or the big money to Saquon Barkley. I think anybody looking at it now would say you have to pay Saquon and build around him. They didn't do that, and they're probably going to pay the price for a long time here.
Oh, no question about it. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that.
Well, let's turn our attention to the NFC, AFC. Let's look at some surprises. Who has been your biggest surprise in the AFC so far?
Coach, you called it months ago. I got to give you props for the Steelers because you told me and you told Jack the Steelers are legitimate contenders. And I'm looking at you like there's no way. They got a young wide receiver. They don't have a lot of depth here and there. I'm looking at all these different things, what they don't have. But what they do have is a great defense. They got Mike Tomlin, and they got that dog in them, Coach. So you are 100% right. You were spot on. Great call by you. I got to give you a props. As you hear my dog.
Yeah. It may have,
let me shut my dog up 1 second, guys.
Yeah, you may have been surprised by Rodney. I know Jack was, but let's go back and hear what we had to say back in May.
I'm going to give you a team that probably nobody's really thinking of, but Pittsburgh Steelers have been very good. They've been, in the race, in the hunt. They just haven't had great quarterback play since Ben Roethlisberger. Well, now they've got
a Super Bowl contender.
Super Bowl contender. You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
Coach, you are caught up in the Russell Wilson and Justin Fields hype. Are you kidding me? A Super Bowl contender? Now, maybe 9-8 and vying for a playoff position, but the Super Bowl contender. Make sure you guys record this because this is absolutely ridiculous.
I love it. 9-8. So maybe if they lose 8 in a row, they'll hit your mark. But unbelievable. I really felt like this was a move that was going to help them. And I trust Mike Tomlin and I trust Russell Wilson. So we'll see how they go. But they're in the hunt, Rob.
Well, you taught Mike Tomlin extremely well. I like them getting Preston Smith, gave him more depth at a position that they've had injuries at. but I also like the addition of Mike Williams. I know he didn't have a big game, and he's going to have to assert himself a little bit more in this offense, and they're going to have to make sure that he becomes a priority because he can't just sit here and kind of disappear on the roster. He has to be a guy that really takes the pressure off the number one receiver in George Pickens. But I do like the moves that he's making. I think he does a great job of really encouraging those guys, and I love the way this defense is flying around playing.
Yeah, no, they're playing good ball, and they are in the hunt. Now, my AFC surprise is the other direction, the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought they would be right there contending for that top spot. They have played outstanding offense. They're moving the ball. They're scoring points. But that defense, Rodney, has been a disappointment.
Oh, Cincinnati has been so much of a disappointment. And I look at Hubbard as a guy that went from a really, a solid pass rusher to a guy that's not even really giving him pass rush. And Cam Taylor-Britt was a kid that came in with so much potential, and he's struggling. He got benched Sunday. So just up and down, inconsistent play by their defenders.
Yeah, and they can still make a run, but right now, having 7 losses at this point, I don't think any of us expected that. Well, how about on the NFC side? Who's your surprise team there?
Well, my surprise team would be the 49ers, and I know a lot of people are still looking at them and saying, oh, well, the 49ers aren't very good or they're up and down. They've been here before, Coach. This is an experienced team. They have a really good head coach. They have Christian McCaffrey getting in shape, coming back. George Kittle, he'll be back. Missing him is huge. But defensively, they just haven't been able to close out games. Some concerns in the secondary. They're playing a lot of different guys, but overall, I still like the 49ers, and I think they're gonna get it right.
Well, they have made some late season runs the last few years, but what really catches my eye, they've lost 3 division games where they had the lead. As you say, the defense hasn't closed out. Arizona, the Rams, and then last week against Seattle. And now you're going on the road 2 weeks in a row, going to Green Bay and to Buffalo. Those are games that are not give-me games, and we're going to see about these 49ers here in the next 2 weeks. Now, for me, my surprise team is on the other end of the spectrum, the Washington Commanders. I thought they would be better. Dan Quinn, I thought, was an upgraded head coach. I thought they'd have a young quarterback who would be able to grow and build. But in no way did I think they'd be competing for a division title and shooting for the playoffs this year, this quick. I think we have to give Dan Quinn a lot of props, Rod.
Oh, man. I mean, new organization, new general manager, new coach, new players, for them to come in and from the outside, it just seemed like they were very stable. We didn't see an up and down situation with the players, the coaching staff. They came in very consistent. That has a lot to do with the coaching staff, but it also has a lot to do with the young quarterback. So, yeah, I would say the biggest surprise in the NFC could be the Commanders, no question.
Well, we talked about surprises. How about teams that we might be sleeping on a little bit? How about in the AFC? Who's your team that we shouldn't forget about?
Don't forget about those Ravens. I know they haven't looked great. I know, they haven't looked great, but this is still a team that I'm still big on. I mean, this is a very talented team. They do have Lamar. They can run the football. I think they're trying to save Derrick Henry and not wear him down too much. But this offense comes down to Todd Monken and his ability to say, I'm going to stay committed to running the football, because I look at Saquon Barkley, I look at Derrick Henry, and they're both the same. You can shut them down 7, 8, 9, 10 runs, and all of a sudden they're going to pop a 50-yarder. They're going to bust a 60-yard run. So you got to stay committed to running the football. But those Ravens, I still trust them, Coach.
I agree. They're second in the league in scoring. Lamar's having a great year. But it just seems like in the big games, they get away from Derrick Henry. I think he had no touches, didn't touch the ball in the fourth quarter last week against Pittsburgh. It's a 1-score game. How can Derrick Henry not touch the ball in the fourth quarter? That's when he's at his best, wearing people down. So I think they'll get it figured out. And I agree with you. They're going to be a threat down the stretch. My team, not to forget about, is the Chargers. I think we all kind of assume Kansas City is going to win that division. But the Chargers are playing tremendous defense. We saw last week what Justin Herbert and some of those receivers can do. I think they're I think they're only getting better, Rod.
Oh, they're going to contend in that division for a long time. And you think about Coach Harbaugh, he probably could have gone anywhere he wanted. He decided specifically, hey, I want to go to the AFC West. I'm going to be, in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and I don't care about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And I believe they're going to compete against him. And that's one thing about Harbaugh. He's never run from a challenge. And I don't think he ever will. The Chargers going to be right there. They got a good football team, coach, and you continue to add some pieces at the wide receiver spot. You go out this next offseason and grab an athletic tight end, and they already have one of the best offensive lines in all of football. And we see the impact that Coach Harbaugh has had on Justin Herbert, tougher, running, using his skills. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. I like that pick by you.
Yep. Well, how about the NFC now? Who should we not sleep on in the NFC?
And I keep telling you guys, and I know the Vikings are there. I know the Detroit Lions are there, but I'm still going with those Packers. The Packers are a young team, Jordan Love. And I would just say this. When I look at the Packers, I see Jordan Love at times trying to do everything, almost like he's trying to justify his contract. You're a great player. You don't have to justify your contract. And it's going to come down to Coach LaFleur kind of reeling him back in and saying, hey, let's make this about Josh Jacobs running the football, and then we can get into passing the ball. But at times, Jordan Love is just too careless with the football. And if they want to win, you can't continue to turn the ball over. I think that defense is continuing to improve. But I like what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. Get Josh Jacobs the football.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the other contender in that division, the Minnesota Vikings. Green Bay's playing good football. Detroit is playing outstanding football, but the Vikings have lost 2 games this year. They lost by 2 points to the Lions, where they had the ball. All they had to do was make 1 first down, and they win the game. Detroit stopped them, and they lost by 2. And then they lost the game to the Rams, where their quarterback gets grabbed by the face mask, and it should be a penalty. It ends up being a safety. So those are the 2 games they've lost. They've got Brian Flores. They're playing outstanding defense. And I think the Vikings are a team, because of how good the Lions have been, people are forgetting about them, but don't forget about the Vikings.
All three of those teams are really good. So you don't forget about any of those teams.
Well, we've seen our surprises, our don't forget about. So let's take a look at who's eating good in the neighborhood, served by Applebee's. And Rodney, I'm going to start with a couple of units that I think are eating really good. And we talked about one of them, the Steelers defense. They have played outstanding defense. They're number 2 in points allowed in the National Football League. They're on a 5-game winning streak. And last week, against a really, really tough Baltimore defense, they shut them down and held them to 16 points. Mike Tomlin talks about hunting the football. This team is eating pretty good on the defensive side of the ball.
Yes, they are. And just they never complain. You never hear them complain about, well, we have injuries at the defense and outside linebacker spot. We have injuries here. We have injuries there. They just go out there and play. And Mike Tomlin expects the next man up to literally be the next man up and no drop off. He's done a tremendous job. For me, the guy that's
let me go
in the
to
neighborhood. Now, I've talked about.
Yeah. Let me go to my offense.
My fault.
Yep. And the other unit that is playing outstanding football is the Detroit Lions offense. They had a little hiccup. We saw them on Sunday night, 5 interceptions, but then they come back with 52 points against the Jaguars, scored 7 straight touchdowns. These guys are on fire.
I don't know who's going to stop the Detroit Lions offense, Coach. And like you always say, they can play any style of offense you want. They can play bully ball. They can drop back and pass it 50 times. They can run screens. They can do whatever, they can run whatever offensive formations they want. They're just that good. For me, Coach, who's eating good in neighborhood, I would have to talk about Saquon Barkley. Now, I've mentioned Jared Goff as a potential MVP, right? But let me just say this about Saquon. Saquon Barkley is the best player I've seen play football this year. I mean, I think we can all agree how magical he's been, how much of an impact he's come in and made, and just how dynamic he's been. Just not running the football, but his leadership, catching the football, all the amazing things that he's done. Saquon Barkley is the best player in the NFL, and he's been the most impressive right now. I believe he should be the MVP of the league. What do you think about that?
I love it. I think you're right. He has been dominant. And that kind of leads us into our Week 12 preview because we're going to see him and the Philadelphia Eagles go into Los Angeles against the Rams. How do the Rams stop this guy?
You asking me how let me just say this about the Rams. The Rams have, on the defensive side of the ball, they got some good guys up front. Okay, Braden Fisk, defensive tackle, Jared Verse, and those guys, they played a lot better. But it's going to be hard to stop Saquon Barkley. You're not going to stop him. You're going to, bend but don't break. That's what the type of defense they play. You got to give up a lot of yards for this guy. The biggest thing is trying to tackle him in open space, not allowing an 8-yard gain to become a 65-yard gain. And that's where Saquon really messes with the defense, Coach.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball, the Rams have gotten back to balance. They've got two really good young running backs. And they're running the football, but the key was getting those two wide receivers back. When Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua got back in the lineup, Matthew Stafford's game just took off, and the Rams are playing very, very well on the offensive side of the ball.
Absolutely, and on the offensive line, they have to make sure that they block Jalen Carter. They make sure because Jalen Carter on the defensive line, he can ruin the game. And, Matthew Stafford, he's not that much of a, pocket. I mean, he's a pocket passer, so he's not moving around a ton. So that's something that I'm watching. Blocking Jalen Carter. Can they handle that force in the inside? And he's been as good as anybody in there.
Well, it sounds like we're going to see a lot of points on the board on Sunday night. Looking forward to it. We'll have our man Jack Collinsworth back with us. And can't wait, Rodney. Sunday Night Football, Rams and the Eagles.
And, Coach, I'll just say this. You did a good job hosting. You did a really good job hosting. But I miss Jack.
Yeah, I'm no Jack Collinsworth. That's for sure. All right, we'll see everybody Sunday night in L.A.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.